From news and views, issues and opportunities, we'll have in-depth conversations with decision makers to find out what they know and what they think. I'm Rico Hizon, inviting you to join the exchange because your business is our business. Here comes the sun. The hotter it gets, the more we dream of having fun in the sun on the best beaches in the world. We don't have to go very far. Paradise is just a short flight, boat, or ride away for so many of us. But maybe not just yet. There are still many pain points in the hospitality and travel industries, but how can we revive and rebuild Philippine tourism, one safe and fun destination at a time? The next time you board a plane, you may need more than one passport to include a vaccine travel pass. The prospects for global tourism as we all travel to a new tomorrow. And the country's flag carrier flies through adversity, building resilience through turbulent times, taking the heart of the Filipino to the skies for 80 years in our sea, sweet vision. Summertime is associated with the sun, sand, and sea. A good season for tourism businesses to thrive in a tropical country with beaches voted one of the world's best. But this pandemic continues to hurt the travel industry. Let's now have an exchange with Congresswoman Sharon Garin, who is passionate about the country's tourism. Kong Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. Our kababayans love to go to the beach and, sightsee our beautiful destinations across the country. Pero masakit makita na summer na, we can't enjoy our tourism spots because of the pandemic and the restrictions.
Yes, for example, the airline industry right now, it's only at 80% capacity, 20% capacity. It's, I think in a couple of months, we'll have airlines that will be closing down. So it's really hurting the economy because if you have an airline, if you have the airport, air industry, you have the tourism, hotels, food, beverage, shopping that will be affected if you don't have the airline industry picking up. So it is dire right now.
It is really dire, and we are in a very sad situation in the tourism industry. And of course, to get across many of these beautiful tourism destinations, Kong Sharon, we need our local carriers, but they're struggling due to prolonged lockdowns and mobility restrictions. And you are proposing a 40 billion peso relief package to keep them in the skies.
Correct. The airlines are conservatively in 2020 probably lost about 50 to 60 billion pesos. All the airlines combined. And if we keep on going like this, quarantine, less quarantine, more quarantine, then it will continue on, and we won't have any more airlines in this year. So we have to support this with giving them reliefs in the regulations, in the taxes, and even giving out loans or guarantees for their loans. There are so much that we can offer the airlines, even without digging a very deep hole in the revenues of the government.
Kong Sharon, let's now listen to two of our kababayans who have different views on vacationing during this pandemic.
Sa akin po hindi kasi mas risky po yung panahon lalo na ngayon na pandemic. Siyempre, mas mahalaga pa rin ang buhay.
Sure. Gusto ko siyempre. With my family. Maaalis yung stress ko kapag nag-travel ako. Kahit pandemic.
Kong Sharon, the bottom line is confidence is key to reviving Philippine tourism, making sure that everyone is safe when they ride a plane or a boat or a tourist bus.
Yes, it's the same argument since last year. It's the fear factor. But how do we address that? We have to have testings in the airports. We have to have standardized health protocols like When do they quarantine? When do they get tested? What do you do in their boarding areas? What do you do in the plane? We still don't have that. Or what does all the LGUs, because each LGUs now have different regulations. And nakakalito rin sa mga passengers, not only to the domestic airlines, no? Pero we need, I think in this sense, this bill can help these airlines and help them build the confidence of their consumers. For example, if you mentioned the vaccine passport or health passport, this is being experimented already by many countries as well as airlines, and I think this is a really good step. And more than the bubble, more than all the other arrangements that other countries have. But I think if there's an international way of making sure that everybody follows the protocol, and that could be a health vaccine passport.
And of course, later on in the show, we'll be speaking to IATA and of course, Philippine Airlines President and CEO Gilbert Santamaria. But going to the grassroots, no, Kong Sharon, your hometown is Iloilo, home to the Gigantes Islands and the Dinagyang Festival. How is local tourism coping there, and how are the establishments being helped?
We don't have our festivals for 2 years already. Dinagyang has or even the fiestas and everything, all that, because it's not just the place, it's the people and the celebrations that we have. There's no market. So, for example, when we have festivals, what we do now is broadcast last year's digitally, and that's it. But we don't. The people who used to get their income from the tourist visitors, they don't have it this year. So
Congresswoman,
I would like.
So, Congresswoman, what is your suggestion right now for tourism establishments to remain relevant and survive during this pandemic?
I think the tourism industry is very resilient in that sense, because they can repurpose. If you're a hotel, you can make it into a health destination, a wellness center. If you're a restaurant, you can practice the redesign and make it more outdoors. They are very resilient in that sense. But they can do that. But us, kami na nasa in the government, needs to take the cudgels, I think. If a traveler wants to travel from his house, going to the airport, going in the plane, getting off there, going to an LGU, checking in the hotel, there are certain things that we need to follow and should be uniform in the whole country. Now we don't have that. Chap-chap tayo ngayon eh. Iloilo has a different rule on travel or for flights. Davao has a different rules, different quarantine rules. So it's confusing, and they have limits on the number of passengers, how many flights per day. It depends on the LGU. So we are an archipelago, but this is one country and one. We cannot do this like iba-iba ang autonomy ng kada LGU, because otherwise, what's the point of having a national domestic airline anyway?
7,108 islands that all have to be on one page to be able to survive this pandemic. Thank you so much for this tourism exchange, Congresswoman Sharon Garin. And join us in the conversation. We want to know, what do you miss the most about traveling? Tag us in your favorite travel photos and let's indulge our wanderlust while staying safe at home. We'll read your responses later on in the program. And now here's a rundown of the week's top business stories. The economy stays in recession, shrinking by 4.2% in January to March as quarantine restrictions continue to hurt business and consumer activity. The Bangko Sentral kept interest rates at a record low of 2%, hoping lower borrowing costs will drive economic activity. And President Rodrigo Duterte places the entire country under a state of calamity due to the African swine fever outbreak, allowing local governments to quickly draw funds for efforts against the hog disease. The president also raised the minimum access volume for pork imports. And straight ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business. What will it take for the aviation industry to take off amid uncertain times? A look at the prospects for global travel with the world's leading airlines. And Mattel wants your old Barbies and Matchboxes for a cause. Details straight ahead on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust.
Ngayon summer, syempre gusto ko mag-swimming. Pero gusto ko sa Boracay.
Marami naman, halimbawa mga resort sa Batangas o kaya sa Ilocos, sa province namin.
Coron, Palawan. Dream destination ko po.
Gusto ko sana mag-travel kahit sa Baguio para malamig naman kaysa dito sa Maynila, mainit.
Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Ports tycoon Enrique Razon Jr. says the proposed mega vaccination site at the Nayong Filipino grounds will be patterned after large inoculation centers in the United States. In an exclusive interview with CNN Philippines, Razon also addressed environmental concerns, saying the facility will rise on reclaimed land and not on a thriving urban forest.
It's an empty property where weeds have grown. And we need to vaccinate the people to be able to open the economy. And at the rate the vaccinations are going, it will take years to obtain herd immunity. And we cannot wait years. We have to do this now.
Razon's company secured government approval to build the mega vaccination facility ahead of the June arrival of its Moderna vaccines. The pandemic has shaken the global tourism industry. How will travel look like in a post-pandemic world? Let's now have an exchange with Conrad Clifford of the International Air Transport Association, or IATA. He joins us now from Singapore. Conrad, thank you so much for joining us. What will it take for you, me, and all our viewers watching us right now to travel again to our favorite Asian destinations without restrictions?
Thanks very much, Rico. It's really dependent on vaccination, and by vaccination I mean achieving herd immunity. And as societies achieve that level, governments become more confident to reopen international borders. So the key to restarting tourism is really mass vaccination.
Mass vaccination indeed, but here in the Philippines, only more than 2 million Filipinos have been vaccinated, and to attain herd immunity, it will have to reach between 60 to 70 million Filipinos. We're still a long way off. And one of IATA's priorities right now, Conrad, for the Asia-Pacific region this year is the Travel Pass Initiative. How will this work for Filipino travelers?
So what we're trying to do is to introduce and facilitate a restart in travel. And the IATA Travel Pass is part of that. It gives governments the confidence that the health credential of the traveller in front of them is genuine. And for airlines, it enables a more digitized progress through the airport. Of course, for travellers themselves, they can find out what the requirements are of any given country in terms of health requirements. So it makes it easier for travellers as well.
So when do you expect this Travel Pass initiative to be implemented by IATA member airlines?
So we are going through trials with a number of airlines globally at the moment. And in fact, one of those airlines is PAL, Philippine Airlines. We started trialing with them earlier this month, and we'll run it through this month, the whole of this month. I would expect that we'll be rolling it out from July. But it's very much dependent on government support. So we need governments to support the use of this digital app in terms of border control and progressing through immigration.
And of course, the bottom line also, Conrad, is that IATA is pushing hard in standardizing testing approaches among countries. But at the moment, every country have their own practices and policies. We were just speaking to a congresswoman earlier on the program, and she said different local government units, even across the Philippines, have different policies and regulations.
Yeah, it's a real problem. You've got not only the international differences, but you've also got within, exactly as you say, within the Philippines, differences between states. And it's not just the Philippines, it's other countries, India, Australia, where individual states within a country have their own protocols and their own things that have to be requirements that have to be met by travelers. And that makes it very, very difficult for airlines to handle effectively. And that's why, as much as possible, using the IATA Travel Pass, we'd like governments to standardize an approach. We've been working with the WHO on a standard certification. We'd like to see standard protocols, ideally globally. It would really help restart.
Because, Conrad, tourism is a key lifeblood for the Philippine economy. The country was already breaking tourism arrival records in 2018 and 2019, but we were all hit by this pandemic in 2020. So to be able to revive our economies, to resuscitate travel, we all have to be on the same page.
We do. And I think really resuscitation, as I said, mass vaccination is very important. Another thing that's being tried with the Phuket sandbox in Thailand is to choose and focus on a particular area and then get everybody in that area vaccinated and then be able to open up to tourism internationally just for that area, isolated from the rest of the country. So that's another potential. And we've been hearing talk that possibly Boracay could be a similar place where you could experiment with a sandbox.
We hope that happens soon. And also critical, Conrad, are the airline members of IATA who are distributing vaccines globally by air, making sure that all vaccines transported arrive safely at their destinations.
Yeah, and it's been a tremendous task moving vaccine all over the globe. It's been a big challenge, but it's something that the airlines, of course, really want to get fixed. So we've been putting a lot of time and effort into doing that. For airlines at the moment, it's been an extremely difficult period. Record losses last year. We're still looking at $47 billion of losses this year. Most airlines need government support, to be honest. So any government relief that can come forward for airlines is very, very much appreciated.
Well, we're hoping that we'll see a turnaround, hopefully keeping our fingers crossed with herd immunity and with these vaccinations being distributed around the world by 2022. Thank you so much for this global travel exchange. Conrad Clifford of the International Air Transport Association, or IATA. Well, earlier we asked you, what do you miss the most about traveling? Well, we received a lot of interesting responses. Lara Ann Garcia said, anonymity. The sights and sounds, different cultures, peoples, the laughter in between, leisure travel is an adventure in itself. Well, Diorel Alqueza said to fall asleep on the plane and wake up surrounded by stars. Oh, that's wonderful. And seeing the sky transform from dawn and into the morning. Shane Amansek says the ecstatic feeling when you arrive at another country's airport, knowing there's a 50-50 chance you might get lost. I wouldn't. And this brings an adrenaline rush. And here's a very interesting user handle, Gracelicious06, shared a photo of a memorable trip pre-pandemic. She said, I miss my solo travels. This is me on my last visit to the United States. Mark Bolotano also tagged us in a photo. He said he misses quality time with his fiancée with the hashtag surviving LDR. So what is LDR? What does it mean? I found out it means long distance relationship. Well, thank you for sharing some of your favorite travel experiences. We're all looking forward to worry-free travels very soon as vaccines offer a glimmer of hope for an end to this pandemic. And still ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business. The aviation industry struggles to take flight with travel restrictions in place. How can they bounce back? Find out in an exchange with Philippine Airlines President and COO, Gilbert Santa Maria. And looks like your old toys won't go to waste. Mattel wants you to give them back. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Here's the latest now from business from around the world. E-commerce giant Amazon blocks 10 billion listings and destroys over 2 million fake items as scammers take advantage of online shoppers during this pandemic. Amazon has been under pressure to fight fraud and abuse on its platform. If you've been looking to get your hands on a new PlayStation 5, well, you may have to wait a little longer. A Sony executive reportedly told analysts that the new console will be in short supply for the rest of the year due to supply chain constraints. And Mattel wants you to give them your old Barbies, Matchboxes, and Mega Toys and use them to make new ones. Right now, the program is only available in the US and Canada, but Mattel plans to expand it to other countries. Airlines are bleeding, as mentioned in our previous interviews with Congresswoman Sharon Garin and Conrad Clifford from IATA. Travel restrictions continue to ground flights, but the country's flag carrier is flying through these turbulent times and staying committed to take the heart of the Filipino to the skies. Let's now have an exchange with Philippine Airlines President and COO, Gilbert Santamaria. Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us. It's been more than a year since the tight restrictions and lockdowns. How is Philippine Airlines continuing to adjust during this turbulence for the aviation industry?
Well, Rico, Eid Mubarak first, and Philippine Airlines is surviving with difficulty, with as much grace as we can muster, and with what we in PAL call MDI, or Management by Divine Intervention. We're doing the same things. We're managing liquidity. We're trying to continue to get the forbearance from our lessors on the payments on the aircraft. We've returned some aircraft, and we're in the middle of restructuring. You've seen us reduce costs, etc. But we've also transformed into a cargo airline. We're carrying cargoes now because of our ideal position in the gates to the Western Pacific. So cargo flies from west of the Philippines across the Pacific on Philippine Airlines now. We're flying to locations we haven't flown before. We need to find wherever we can find to keep ourselves flying.
Despite the challenges of the pandemic, how is the carrier supporting our kababayans and the government in its COVID-19 response?
Well, the most important function an airline does is to keep flying, right? So we never stop. And we actually started very early on with a Diamond Princess repatriation and never stopped repatriating OFWs. To this day, more than half, over half, or the bulk of the repatriations of OFWs came over on Philippine Airlines. Most of them came home on Philippine Airlines. We've been bringing PPEs in, now we're flying vaccines in. And the vaccines are basically being flown in from China right now. We're getting ready to fly them in from Russia, from Europe, from wherever we need to go to bring the vaccines in. And then we're bringing the vaccines over to the provincial locations because we have our own freezers in our cargo center in the airport. And so we're using those, the DOH is using those to keep the vaccines chilled before we load them on the aircraft and fly them to where they need to be put in people's arms. So we've never stopped supporting the Philippine government. We're working on reopening for tourism. We're working on tourism plans. You may have heard about the Israel flights that are expected. Well, we're doing that because the Israelis want to fly to the Philippines, but they want us to start marketing so that Filipinos can fly to Israel with no visas. Assuming everything becomes safe again in Israel, that's going to create another tourist market that we haven't really used before. And we're going to keep doing that and expand the economy because that's the only way we'll also survive.
That is also a key market. Israel, there are around 30,000 Filipinos who are living and working there. We spoke earlier with Conrad Clifford from IATA, and he said that Philippine Airlines is joining a trial run of the travel pass developed by IATA. When do you think will this materialize, and how will this work for travelers, Filipino travelers?
So the travel pass is already in place. We've started doing it on Singapore and Los Angeles flights, selected flights outbound from Manila. And right now it's only on the iOS operating platforms or Apple phones. We'll have them on Android soon enough. IATA will have them on Android soon enough. And we're experimenting with it, we're testing it, we're working out the bugs. We're trying to see if we can make it work so that instead of piles of paper that our passengers have to fill out to go from one country to another, we can have everything onto one simple app. And that's really the reason we're doing this, so that everything can be contained, your passport, your details, your vaccination details, your testing results can be in one secure place that other countries will accept, because the airlines will be using it as almost a standard.
Why did you decide to use this trial run of IATA's travel pass for the Singapore and the Los Angeles flights, Gilbert?
Well, we're trying to get as big a cross-section of our passengers as we can. Most of our passengers to Singapore continue on to other destinations and are largely OFWs. Most of our passengers to Los Angeles are what we call visiting friends and relatives, right? Filipino balikbayans, residents of the US. Filipinos have family or business or studies in the US. And so different profiles of passengers, different demographics. We want to see if this tool, this IATA travel pass, would be useful to them, to our passengers, and whether it actually make their lives easier and the airline's life easier.
And as the airline COO and president, you've gone through peaks and valleys with the airline. What have you learned from this pandemic, and what is the flight path for PAL looking like going forward?
Well, what have I learned? 3 words, pride and fear and hope. I'll tell you a couple of stories. When the Diamond Princess repatriation was necessary last year, in March last year, there was a debate internal to Philippine Airlines. Should we bring people home who have the COVID, who may have the COVID virus? And this was before anybody knew anything about COVID. All we knew was it was deadly and it was infectious. And the question within Philippine Airlines was, would any of our crew fly? And when we asked our crews, would you volunteer to fly to pick up these OFWs, we had an overwhelming response of hundreds of people. So that's pride. Another story was when we repatriated the bodies of OFWs from Saudi Arabia who had passed away because of COVID, as the bodies were being unloaded at Villamor Air Base and the band struck up the national anthem, the only flag at the airport at that point was the flag on our tails. And everyone turned to the tail of the 330 as the national anthem played. That is pride. Now, fear is we want to be able to make sure that we can keep supporting the country, right? So our fear is that we will fail. Our fear is that we will not be there for the country as it takes off because of the challenges that Congresswoman Garin had laid out. Those are real. And hope is we have faith in our restructuring ability, and we have faith in the resiliency of Filipinos. And so we have faith in the skill of Filipinos, and we believe that we will make it through this, and we will continue working with the government and the people of the Philippines to make it through this.
Thank you so much for this airline exchange, Philippine Airlines President and COO Gilbert Santamaria. We all miss traveling, lounging on the beach on a hot, sunny day, or exploring an unfamiliar city thousands of miles away from home. But with the coronavirus still raging, we have to be responsible and careful with our ways. Here are some guiding words from Richard Fain, Chairman and the CEO of the global cruise giant Royal Caribbean Group. The pandemic is not over. As eager as we all are to move on, we can't let our guard down in this last stretch. And this is The Exchange. We make sense of the facts and the figures and the ups and downs of the business cycle because your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can use. News you can trust.